I stood at gate B42 of Denver International Airport, my suitcase upright by my side, boarding pass clutched between two fingers. The hum of overhead announcements echoed across the terminal. Families bustled past with laughter and carry-ons, and I felt absolutely nothing. Weeks of planning, packing, and silent guilt had all led to this moment. A family trip to Lake Tahoe, supposedly adults only, supposedly a reset. My mother had said it a dozen times. You deserve this, Maya. Let Tessa watch the kids. Just enjoy being you for once. She said it like it was kindness, but it wasn't, because right as the pre-boarding call rang out, I saw her, Natalie. My sister walked toward me in a white jumpsuit and oversized sunglasses, like she was walking a red carpet. And trailing behind her, like ducklings in chaos, were her 3 children, backpacks bouncing, snacks in sticky hands. One of them already sprinting toward the nearest vending machine like he was escaping prison. I froze. For a split second, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. They said no kids. That was the entire point. They had begged me to leave Chloe and Jacob behind. They'd made me feel like I was being selfish for hesitating. And now this? Mom. I turned as Janet approached, dragging Douglas behind her with that usual hurry-up energy. Did something change? She barely blinked. Oh, Maya, don't look so shocked. Natalie needed the break. You know how hard it is for her. My mouth went dry. So the trip isn't adults only? Janet gave a little laugh, waving a hand like I'd asked something silly. It is for most, but Natalie's kids are no trouble. They're such sweethearts. I blinked. Was she serious? Douglas chimed in with a chuckle, already scanning the gate for coffee. You worry too much, Maya. You're always so tense. And that's when it happened. The sentence that would change everything. My mother glanced back at Natalie's youngest, who was now climbing onto an airport bench like it was a jungle gym, and she said, light as air, sweet as poison, we just love them more. At first, I thought I misheard. Surely she hadn't just said that out loud. But then she smiled, a calm, serene smile, like she'd offered me a compliment. I felt my stomach turn, my chest tighten. My children weren't even worth a plane ticket. I took a step back. Excuse me. Janet sighed like I was being difficult. Oh, don't be so sensitive, Maya. You know what I mean. Natalie's kids are just easier. They listen better. They're more lovable. Lovable. She said it like it was a fact. Not an opinion, not a slip of the tongue. A cold, measured truth. I stared at her, trying to find a flicker of guilt in her eyes. There was none. Not even hesitation. My hand gripped the suitcase tighter. You lied to me, I said. You looked me in the eyes and told me it was adults only. Douglas let out a slow exhale. Don't be dramatic. Natalie's doing her best. She's a single mom, remember? I'm a single mom, I whispered. But no one ever makes exceptions for me. Natalie finally looked up from her phone and smiled lazily. Relax, Maya. My kids are angels. You won't even notice them. That was the moment. The one I'd always wondered if I'd recognize. The moment when everything changes. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was irrelevant. I turned to my boarding pass. The destination didn't matter anymore. I looked back at them, my parents, my sister, her children who could do no wrong, and I knew I wasn't going on that trip. They had made their choice. Now it was time I made mine. I don't remember walking back to the parking garage. I must have looked like a ghost moving through the crowd, silent, distant, no longer tethered to the noise around me. I didn't even cry. Not yet. The anger hadn't taken shape, and the sadness hadn't landed. All I felt was a kind of numb clarity, like waking up from a long, disorienting dream where you'd convinced yourself you were loved. The engine hummed as I pulled onto Pana Boulevard, the Denver skyline shrinking behind me in the rearview mirror. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Mom, again. I didn't touch it. The city blurred past my windows, but all I could see were my children's faces. Chloe's bright eyes blinking sleepily when I kissed her goodbye. Jacob's little voice asking, "You'll call, right, Mommy?" I had promised I'd call. I had promised, because I thought this was temporary. Just a few days away. A chance to breathe, like they said. "You give too much, Maya," Tessa had told me. "You need a break before you burn out." I believed her. I believed them. And now I had left my children behind so that my parents could spend a luxury retreat with their real family. It wasn't just the airport. It wasn't just the lie. It was everything. Every birthday party where Chloe got a cheap plastic toy while Natalie's kids got new bikes. Every holiday where my kids were told to sit quietly while hers got praised for singing out of tune. Every time Mom would glance at me with that look, not quite disappointment, not quite contempt, just dismissal. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. The skin across my knuckles stretched pale. All this time, I thought I was imagining it. I told myself I was being insecure, jealous, overthinking. I let them guilt me into silence, because that's what good daughters do. That's what second-place daughters learn to do. They shrink so others can feel tall. But today they said it out loud. We just love them more. It wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't said in anger. It was a confession, a truth they had believed for years and had finally grown comfortable enough to stop hiding. I had spent nearly 4 decades trying to earn something that was never mine to win. I gave them everything, my holidays, my money, my time, and they repaid me with scraps of approval when it suited them. And now they had shown me, crystal clear, where I stood in their perfect little hierarchy. The truth sat like a stone in my chest. I wasn't just excluded from the trip. I was excluded from the narrative. I was the utility daughter, the responsible one, the background support, who held everything together so Natalie could shine in the spotlight. And my children, they were just footnotes in someone else's family photo. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the numbness had settled into something heavier. I killed the engine, sat in silence, and stared at the door I had walked out of just that morning, believing, foolishly, that my family saw me, that my parents valued me, that my children, in their eyes, were as cherished as Natalie's. I was wrong, and now I couldn't pretend anymore. The house was still when I stepped inside. Tessa had left the porch light on and a note on the kitchen counter in her careful handwriting. "Kids had dinner. All good. Call me if you need anything." I stood there for a long minute, the silence pressing in around me, heavier than the noise ever could have been. My suitcase, still clutched in one hand, unopened. My boarding pass, crumpled and forgotten in the other. Upstairs, I could hear the gentle rise and fall of little breaths. Chloe and Jacob were asleep. They had no idea what had happened, no idea how close I'd come to disappearing for days, or how close I had come to disappearing altogether. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the blinking cursor on my phone. The screen glowed coldly, like it knew this wasn't just a message, it was a fracture, a final cut through flesh that had already scarred too many times. My heart pounded in my chest. My hand shook just slightly, but my mind was clear. I opened the Wallace family group chat, the same thread where my parents posted photos of Natalie's kids almost daily. The same thread where my children's names were barely mentioned unless I brought them up. The same thread I had stayed in for years out of guilt, out of hope, out of habit. I took a deep breath and began to type. I won't be coming on the trip, and I won't be part of this family anymore either. I paused. That could have been enough, but it wasn't. I've spent my entire life being treated like I was less, like my children were less. Today you said it out loud. You made it clear. That will never change. So I'm done. My thumb hovered over the send button. 1 second. 2. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just pressed it. Message delivered. I sat back in the chair, exhaling like I hadn't breathed in hours. The cursor blinked again, waiting for a reply that didn't come. Not yet. And I knew, if I waited, they'd try to twist it. So I didn't wait. I opened the contact list, blocked Janet, blocked Douglas, blocked Natalie, deleted the group chat, deleted every thread that began with "Can you help?" or "Be a good sister," and just like that, it was done. The severing wasn't loud. There was no dramatic shout, no slam door, just a phone gone still, and a woman finally reclaiming the silence. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone else's voice to tell me who I was. I went upstairs and peeked into my children's room. Chloe had one arm thrown across her stuffed unicorn. Jacob snored softly into his pillow. Their cheeks were flushed with warmth, peace, and something else, safety. They had no idea what I had just done, but I had done it for them, and for myself, for the woman I was tired of apologizing for the mother I'd fought to become without anyone's help. I closed the door softly and whispered, "No more." The next morning, I woke to nothing. No messages, no missed calls, not even a passive-aggressive group text from Janet about breakfast buffets or scenic overlooks. For a moment, I let myself believe maybe they understood. Maybe they read my words and finally saw me. But by the time lunch rolled around, the silence broke. The first call came from my mother. I watched the screen flash "Mom Mobile," the name glowing against the darkened background of my phone. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not yet. An hour later, she called again. Then Douglas. Then both, within minutes of each other. By evening, I had 6 missed calls. Still no messages. No explanations. No apologies. Just that relentless buzz like they were knocking on a door they'd kicked me out of years ago. On the second day, the tone changed. Mom's voice finally arrived, not in apology, but in warning, dressed up as concern. "Maya, sweetie, let's be reasonable. You're overreacting. We need to talk." Then Dad, "Enough of this nonsense. Call your mother back." Natalie, unsurprisingly, chimed in too. "Seriously, Maya? You're mad about this? Grow up." I read them all in silence, my thumb hovering over the screen, tempted to answer, to explain, to argue. But what was left to say? They weren't sorry. They were just inconvenienced. They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They were reaching out because I had broken the pattern, and they didn't like that. I wasn't being a good daughter. I wasn't being predictable. On the third day, I almost cracked. I stood in the kitchen, reheating leftovers, when another message came through. My fingers trembled just a little as I opened it, heart pounding like maybe, this one would be different. "Maya, your father and I need help financially. We need to talk." I blinked. Read it again. There it was, the truth beneath all the noise. It wasn't about missing me. It wasn't about regret. It was about access. For years, I'd helped them, quietly, without fanfare, paid their late bills, lent money for repairs, covered holidays when things came up. I never questioned it. I just told myself this is what daughters do. This is what family does. But as I stood there, spoon in hand, the sting of that sentence settled in my bones. They never helped me. Not when I was drowning after Ethan left. Not when I was working 2 jobs to stay afloat with 2 toddlers. Not when I called crying in the middle of the night, just needing someone to say you're doing great, Maya. They were always too tired, too busy, too absorbed in Natalie's latest meltdown or Natalie's latest miracle. And now, after years of one-sided loyalty, they had the audacity to frame my silence as cruelty and their financial needs as my duty. I set the spoon down, walked to the living room, sat with my phone in my lap, and I didn't reply, because I finally understood something. They never loved me for me. They loved the version of me that was useful, quiet, dependable, convenient, and the moment I stopped being that, I became a problem. So let me be the problem now. I turned my phone over, screen facing down, and let the silence ring louder than their guilt ever could. That night, as I tucked Chloe and Jacob into bed, something in me shifted. Maybe it was the weight of silence pressing on my shoulders. Maybe it was the echoes of my parents' texts still ringing in my ears. Or maybe it was finally seeing the pattern I'd spent years trying to ignore. Because this wasn't the first time I'd begged to be seen. Ethan. His name came to me like a wound that had scabbed over, but never healed. It had been over 2 years since our divorce, but the memories still came sharp, uninvited. I remembered the first time I realized I was married to a man who had already left, long before he packed a single bag. When I was pregnant with Chloe, Ethan started working late. When Jacob was born, he barely looked up from his phone. Birthdays, anniversaries, even the first time Chloe lost a tooth, he wasn't there. Not really. His body was present, sure, but his attention, his warmth, gone. I remember standing in our kitchen one night, rocking Jacob in one arm while Chloe tugged at my sleeve, asking for juice. I was tired, so tired I felt like my bones might collapse. And Ethan stood by the fridge, watching me fall apart with that same empty look he always wore near the end. "I just don't think I can do this anymore," he said. My brain barely processed it. "Do what?" I asked, voice small. He shrugged. "Any of it." There was no affair, no screaming, no dramatic ending. Just a quiet man, choosing freedom over responsibility. And me? Left holding 2 children and a life I didn't know how to carry alone. For months, I woke up to silence and the weight of bills, meals, daycare drop-offs, client deadlines. I cried on the bathroom floor more times than I could count. But no one saw that version of me, not even my own family, because Natalie's divorce was messier, louder, more performative, and therefore more deserving of attention. I had survived that alone. And now, watching my parents weaponize silence the same way Ethan did. Ignoring my pain until they needed something, I saw it all for what it was. I had spent my entire life begging for love that should have been given freely. Ethan couldn't give it. My parents wouldn't give it. And God help me, I had kept showing up anyway, thinking one more good deed, one more sacrifice, one more silent endurance would finally make them love me the way I needed. But it never came. And now, with the cold clarity of distance, I finally saw the truth. It was never about me being enough. It was about them never being capable. It didn't happen all at once. The healing, the clarity, the release. It started quietly, like a room after the guests have left, still humming with the memory of noise. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my phone between meetings, hoping for a text that said, "I'm proud of you." I wasn't planning my schedule around family dinners that felt more like performances. I wasn't apologizing to anyone for being tired. I was just living. That Saturday morning, I made pancakes. Real ones, fluffy, golden warm. Not the box mix I usually slap together while yelling at Chloe to find her shoes and Jacob to stop licking the fridge. We danced in the kitchen. No reason, no music. Just Chloe spinning in her mismatched socks and Jacob drumming on the counter with a wooden spoon. I laughed. I actually laughed. It felt foreign in my mouth. Tessa walked in mid-spin, still in her hoodie from the night before, coffee already in hand. She leaned against the doorway and raised an eyebrow. "So this is the new you?" I flipped a pancake and smiled. "No, this is the me that was always underneath." She watched me closely. "You're really done with them, huh?" I nodded, but it didn't feel triumphant. It felt necessary. Later that afternoon, as I was sorting laundry, Chloe walked in dragging her stuffed unicorn behind her. "Mommy," she asked soft, "when are we going to Grandma and Grandpa's again?" I froze. My hands paused mid-fold. The room seemed to still with her question. Jacob perked up from the floor. "Yeah, we haven't seen them in forever." How do you explain to a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old that their grandparents see them as collateral damage? How do you say they didn't forget you, they just chose someone else? I knelt to their level, brushed a curl from Chloe's cheek. "We're not going to see Grandma and Grandpa anymore," I said gently. "Why not?" She blinked, confused. "Because sometimes family doesn't treat us the way we deserve to be treated," I said, my throat tightening. "And when that happens, we have to protect ourselves." Chloe stared at me for a moment, considering, then nodded. Okay, she said simply, like her soul already knew. She picked up her unicorn and skipped away like she had just accepted the sky was blue. I stood in that room for a long time, arms limp by my sides, eyes stinging. It had taken me decades to let go. It took her 2 seconds, and maybe that's what broke me most. It was a Thursday. The sky was gray with the kind of stillness that settles before a storm. I had just settled onto the couch, tea in hand, when there was a knock at the door. 3 short raps. Not urgent, not hesitant, familiar. I froze. No one ever just showed up at my house. I walked to the front window, slowly, peeked through the curtain, and felt my stomach drop. Natalie. Her blonde hair was swept into that effortless bun she always wore when she wanted to seem casual but put together. She was shifting her weight from one foot to the other, arms crossed, gaze bouncing between her phone and the doormat. I considered turning off the lights, pretending I wasn't home, but something deeper than spite pulled me toward the door, closure. I opened it, but didn't step aside. Natalie raised her eyebrows, mildly amused. Wow, no hello. I didn't respond. She sighed. Fine. I came to talk about Mom and Dad. I leaned on the frame. There's nothing to talk about. Oh, come on, Maya, she said, annoyed now. You made your point. You're mad. We get it. But they're still your parents. I let out a short laugh. No, Natalie. They were my parents. Until they told me, in the middle of a public airport, that they love your kids more than mine. She rolled her eyes. Oh, please. They didn't mean it like that. I locked eyes with her. They meant it exactly like that, I said quietly. And what's worse, you didn't flinch when they said it. You agreed, Natalie, with your silence. She shifted, finally unsettled. Look, she said, softening their hold. They don't always say the right things. You can't just cut them off forever. Can't I? I tilted my head, because that's exactly what I did. And you're here, because for the first time in your life, they're panicking. She opened her mouth, closed it. I kept going. I'm done being the extra daughter, the one who works quietly in the background while everyone claps for you. I'm done pretending I don't notice how different the rules are for you and me. Natalie blinked. There was something in her eyes. Not guilt, not apology, just the faintest flicker of awareness. Like maybe, for a second, she saw the full weight of what she had benefited from and how much I had lost along the way. I stepped back just an inch and gripped the edge of the door. This is the last conversation we'll ever have, I said. So if there's something you need to say it now. Natalie opened her mouth again, but said nothing. Just stood there, watching as I closed the door. And this time, I was the one who walked away. That evening, I sat on the couch with Tessa, tea in hand. No words between us. Just the soft sounds of laughter spilling from the hallway where Chloe and Jacob played some game only they understood. Tessa took a sip and leaned her head against the back of the couch. So she said, your sister showed up. I nodded. Let me guess, she said. She wanted you to forgive and forget. Wrap it all up in a pretty bow so nobody has to feel guilty. I smirked. You've always been good at guessing. She looked at me, and I told her to leave, I said. Told her it was over. Not just this fight, all of it. Tessa didn't speak right away. She just reached over, touched my hand, and for the first time in a while I stirred soup on the stove. She clutched her stuffed unicorn tight, her brows furrowed. Mommy, she asked, do you think Grandma and Grandpa ever loved us? The spoon paused in my hand. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw the one thing I had sworn to protect. Innocence asking if it had ever been enough. I knelt beside her and brushed her hair back. They love in the only way they know how, I said gently. But it wasn't the kind of love we deserve. She nodded like she understood more than a child should. I'm glad we don't go there anymore. Me too, I whispered. That night, after the kids were in bed, I lay in the quiet and stared at the ceiling. I thought about everything I had left behind, the family I was born into, the marriage I tried to save, the approval I used to chase. And then I thought about what I had now. Peace. Not perfection. Not closure. Just peace. No more chasing. No more shrinking. No more performing. Just me. And my children. And the sound of laughter in a house that finally felt like home.